There is a category of product vulnerability that receives almost no coverage in mainstream media, preparedness circles, or consumer advocacy spaces. It has nothing to do with natural disasters, port strikes, or agricultural collapse. It operates entirely within the ordinary machinery of retail commerce, and it happens continuously, invisibly, and well ahead of any public awareness. Grocery chain buyers, the professionals responsible for managing SKU counts, gross margin percentages, and shelf space allocation, make discontinuation decisions on a rolling, quarterly cycle. By the time a product disappears from your local store, that decision was finalized months earlier in a planning meeting you were never invited to attend. The product was not pulled because of a recall. It was not pulled because of a shortage. It was pulled because something else generates a higher return per square foot of shelf space. And in the economics of modern grocery retail, that calculation is the only one that ultimately matters. What this creates is a specific and predictable pattern of loss. The items that vanish first are not the ones generating headlines. They are the ones sitting in the 8 to 12% gross margin zone. Products that are nutritionally exceptional, shelf-stable, and deeply undervalued by the average consumer. When their velocity slows even marginally, they become targets for consolidation. As of early 2026, distribution intelligence and supplier communications have identified a cohort of products currently moving through that discontinuation pipeline. Some of these items cost under $1. In several represent the highest nutritional value per dollar available anywhere in a standard grocery store. All of them share a single defining characteristic. They will be significantly harder to find within the next 12 months, and most consumers will discover that fact standing in front of an empty shelf space already occupied by a replacement product. This analysis covers 18 of them, organized by functional category, with the nutritional science and practical preparation context that most coverage on this topic consistently omits. We begin at the bottom of the countdown and build toward the items with the most significant implications. Number 18. Canned artichoke hearts. The micronutrient anchor disappearing from the standard grocery aisle. Canned artichoke hearts occupy a peculiar position in the modern grocery store. They are not associated with any particular cuisine trend. They do not generate significant promotional activity. They sit in the canned vegetable section and move at a pace that makes them structurally vulnerable to consolidation, despite representing one of the most nutritionally concentrated shelf-stable vegetables available at any price point. The relevant data: 1 cup of canned artichoke hearts delivers 10 grams of dietary fiber, 4 grams of protein, and meaningful quantities of folate, vitamin K, magnesium, and potassium. The fiber profile includes inulin, a prebiotic compound that functions specifically as a substrate for beneficial gut bacteria, particularly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains. This is not the same category of fiber as wheat bran or psyllium. Prebiotic fiber has a distinct physiological function that standard fiber counts do not capture. During any period of dietary restriction, whether by circumstance or disruption, gut microbiome diversity deteriorates rapidly when prebiotic substrate is removed from the diet. The downstream effects include reduced immune function, impaired mood regulation through the gut-brain axis, and compromised absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Artichoke hearts address that specific vulnerability at a cost of roughly $1.89 per can. Several national chains are reducing artichoke heart SKU counts in 2026 as part of canned vegetable consolidation. They will not be replaced with a nutritional equivalent. Stock before the decision becomes visible on the shelf. Number 17. Canned roasted red peppers. The vitamin C source with a shelf-stable profile that no fresh alternative can match. A single cup of canned roasted red peppers delivers approximately 190 milligrams of vitamin C, nearly double the daily recommended intake, along with a concentration of lycopene that increases during the roasting process due to heat-induced breakdown of cell wall structures that normally limit carotenoid bioavailability. The nutritional case for this product is straightforward and well documented. The commercial case for cutting it is equally straightforward. canned roasted red peppers turn slowly in stores that have not built a culinary culture around Mediterranean-style cooking. Regional chains with narrower international sections are reducing orders in 2026. And independent importers who have supplied specialty grocery chains are losing shelf placement to domestic alternatives that carry superior margins despite an inferior product profile. The preparation applications are extensive and require minimal culinary skill. Blended into soups, pureed into sauces, layered into grain-based dishes, or eaten directly from the can. The flavor contribution is smoky, slightly sweet, and requires no additional preparation beyond draining. For any household managing extended pantry reliance, this is one of the few items that provides genuine palatability variety alongside meaningful micronutrient density. Number 16. Dried lentils, red and green, store brand. The fastest cooking legume, losing its generic footprint. Lentils require no soaking, cook in under 25 minutes, and deliver 18 grams of protein and 16 grams of fiber per cooked cup. They are one of the richest plant-based sources of folate, iron, and manganese available in a dry, shelf-stable format. The iron in lentils is non-heme iron, which is less bioavailable than heme iron from animal sources. But pairing lentils with any vitamin C source, see roasted red peppers above, increases non-heme iron absorption by up to 300% according to established nutritional biochemistry. Store brand dried lentil SKUs are being consolidated at several chains in 2026. The drivers are familiar. Name brands hold the category anchor position, organic premiums generate better margins, and store brands in this category exist in a commercial no man's land. When store brand lentils disappear, the replacement price per pound increases by roughly 60 to 80%. And the product is identical. The margin structure is not. Number 15. Canned white beans, cannellini. The protein foundation being quietly displaced by trendier legumes. Cannellini beans represent one of the most nutritionally complete canned legumes on the standard grocery shelf. Per cup, they deliver 17 grams of protein, 11 grams of fiber, significant quantities of iron, potassium, and folate, and a resistant starch profile that supports the same glucose-stabilizing effects documented in chickpeas. Their culinary neutrality, a mild, creamy flavor that absorbs surrounding ingredients rather than competing with them, makes them functionally superior to stronger-flavored legumes in mixed dishes. The commercial pressure comes from two directions simultaneously. Trendy legumes, particularly lentil-based products marketed as functional foods, are consuming shelf space that cannellini once held without competition. Simultaneously, private label consolidation is reducing the number of store-brand white bean SKUs available, pushing consumers toward premium-priced name brands or away from the product entirely. Regional chains in the Midwest and Northeast are showing the sharpest inventory reductions in early 2026. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, the nutritional science behind what's actually leaving shelves and why, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It helps this content reach people who need it before the decisions are already made. Number 14. Canned mackerel, revisited, the full case. Before reaching the original countdown items, mackerel deserves a more thorough treatment than most preparedness content affords it. The nutritional superiority of mackerel over tuna is not a matter of preference or taste. It is quantifiable across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Atlantic mackerel contains approximately 2.6 grams of omega-3 fatty acids per 100 gram serving, compared to roughly 0.7 grams for light canned tuna and approximately 1.9 grams for canned salmon. It delivers more complete protein per ounce than either alternative. It contains significantly higher quantities of vitamin B12, selenium, and vitamin D3. It costs approximately $1.50 per can at current mainstream retail pricing, compared to $5 or more for comparable canned salmon and $2.50 for name-brand tuna. There is precisely one legitimate barrier to adoption: flavor. A mackerel packed in brine or water carries a strong metallic quality that functions as a sensory barrier for most first-time consumers. Mackerel packed in olive oil is categorically different. The oil moderates the intensity, preserves flavor over the shelf life of the can, and eliminates the metallic aftertaste that creates the initial rejection response. This is not a matter of opinion. The chemistry of fat-soluble flavor compound preservation is well understood in food science, and the olive oil pack specification matters enough to function as a purchasing rule, not a recommendation. Several major chains have communicated significantly reduced mackerel orders to their seafood suppliers for 2026. The reasoning is commercial velocity data. It will leave a genuine nutritional gap on the shelf. Number 13. Evaporated milk, the misunderstood shelf-stable dairy product being displaced by lower protein alternatives. Evaporated milk and sweetened condensed milk share a shelf location and a visual format that obscures a fundamental functional difference. Sweetened condensed milk is a confectionery ingredient. High sugar, dessert-specific, with a flavor profile unsuitable for most savory applications. Evaporated milk is unsweetened concentrated dairy, roughly 60% of its water content removed, with a protein density, fat content, and caloric profile that no plant-based shelf-stable alternative currently matches. The commercial logic driving its removal is transparent. Oat milk, almond milk, Pantry, and shelf-stable plant-based dairy alternatives carry significantly higher gross margins and considerably more consumer brand awareness in 2026. 2 or more major national chains are substantially reducing evaporated milk inventory as part of dairy alternative aisle expansion. The shelf space being reclaimed will go to products that generate better returns, regardless of comparative nutritional profiles. What evaporated milk delivers that those alternatives cannot is straightforward. Reconnected with equal parts water, it produces full-fat dairy milk with a shelf life of 2 or more years at room temperature, requiring no refrigeration until opened. The protein content per dollar is higher than any shelf-stable carton alternative currently on the market. For households managing extended power disruptions, the elimination of refrigeration dependency is not a secondary consideration. It is the central one. There is a preparation technique worth knowing that professional kitchens have employed for decades. Refrigerate the unopened can in cold water for 30 minutes, then whip the contents vigorously upon opening. The resulting product thickens into a stable cream substitute with genuine textural integrity. At under $2 per can, the value proposition is essentially unmatched in the shelf-stable dairy space. Number 12. Canned pumpkin, pure, not pie filling, the year-round nutritional staple being relegated to seasonal availability. The commercial decision being executed here is clean from a buyer's perspective and consequential from a consumer's. Pure canned pumpkin, not pumpkin pie filling, which contains added sugar and spices and represents a categorically different product, generates its meaningful sales volume in a compressed October-November window. The remaining 9 months deliver thin margins on slow-moving inventory. Several large chains are transitioning their pure canned pumpkin SKUs to seasonal availability only in 2026. The nutritional profile of this product is genuinely exceptional, and most consumers have no awareness of it. 1 cup of pure canned pumpkin delivers 245% of the daily value for vitamin A in beta-carotene form, a superior dietary antioxidant source that exceeds carrot content on a per-cup basis. The fiber content surpasses oatmeal per equivalent serving. The caloric total remains at approximately 83 calories per cup. Is this combination, extreme micronutrient density at negligible caloric cost, is essentially unmatched at the $1.29 price point. The culinary neutrality of pure pumpkin is equally significant. It contains almost no assertive flavor compounds. Mixed into chili, it extends volume without altering taste. Incorporated into pasta sauce, it adds both body and vitamin density that remains completely undetectable in the finish. But purchasing consistently throughout the year eliminates exposure to that competition entirely. Number 11. Canned green chilies, store brand. The 89-cent morale resource that preparedness content consistently undervalues. This item requires a conceptual framework shift before the nutritional and practical arguments become legible. Most emergency preparedness analysis treats morale as a soft variable, important, secondary to caloric and macronutrient sufficiency. Documented emergency psychology and military nutrition research consistently reach a different conclusion. Physical resources in most extended disruption scenarios deplete slowly and predictably, while morale collapses rapidly and with cascading consequences for decision-making, appetite regulation, and psychological stability. The primary driver of morale deterioration in extended dietary restriction scenarios is food fatigue, the involuntary appetite suppression that develops after repeated exposure to structurally similar meals. After 10 to 14 days of monotonous, shelf-stable eating, appetite decreases even in nutritionally replete individuals. The consequences include reduced caloric intake during periods of elevated physiological stress, impaired cognitive performance, and measurable anxiety elevation. Capsaicin, the compound responsible for heat in chili peppers, addresses this specific vulnerability through a documented neurological mechanism. The consumption of dietary capsaicin triggers endorphin release via a pathway that operates independently of psychological expectation or placebo effect. It does not transform the structure of a meal. It changes how the nervous system registers the experience of eating it. This is biochemistry, not anecdote. A 4-ounce can of canned green chilies delivers 45% of the daily vitamin C requirement and costs 89 cents at store-brand pricing. 2 large chains are cutting store-brand green chili SK Us in 2026, redirecting shelf space toward salsa and higher-margin condiment products. When store brands are discontinued, name brand equivalents run $2.50 or more for an identical product volume. 12 cans represent a morale and micronutrient investment of under $11 with a multi-year shelf life. Number 10. 6-ounce canned tomato paste. The format casualty with nutritional implications that most shoppers will miss entirely. The shift being executed here is subtle enough that most consumers will experience it as a product improvement rather than a product loss. Several national chains are phasing out the 6-ounce tomato paste format in favor of 12 and 28-ounce alternatives. The commercial rationale is unambiguous. Larger formats generate more revenue per unit at nearly identical production cost and occupy the same shelf footprint. From a margin optimization perspective, this is an obvious decision. The practical reality diverges sharply. Single-person and small family households cannot realistically use 28 ounces of tomato paste before the opened product deteriorates. The 6-ounce can represent the correct portioning unit for actual residential cooking applications. Its elimination forces either chronic food waste or a structural change in cooking behavior. The nutritional argument for tomato paste specifically, as opposed to other tomato products, centers on lycopene bioavailability. Heat processing involved in producing paste increases lycopene bioavailability by 2 to 4 times compared to fresh tomatoes, according to nutrition research from established academic institutions. A single tablespoon of tomato paste delivers more bioavailable lycopene than an entire fresh tomato at a fraction of the cost. For a pantry relying heavily on shelf-stable ingredients, this represents a meaningful antioxidant contribution with no equivalent at the same price point. Yet the waste problem has a practical solution worth committing to memory. Portion unused paste from an opened can into ice cube trays at approximately 1 tablespoon per cube, cover, and freeze. Each cube remains viable for 6 months and can be retrieved individually as needed. This approach eliminates the format disadvantage and maintains access to the nutritional profile regardless of can size. Purchase the small format while it remains available. If you're learning something here that the standard preparedness content doesn't cover, the margin economics, the micronutrient science, the real reasons these products are leaving, hit like and subscribe. This is the kind of analysis that takes time to build, and your support makes it possible to keep doing it. Number 9. Chickpeas, canned. Each store brand. The resistant starch protein being consolidated off the shelf by buyer velocity preferences. The canned bean aisle presents an appearance of uniformity that obscures significant differentiation in how individual products are managed. Not all beans command equivalent commercial protection. Black beans and kidney beans generate higher velocity. They move faster, turn more frequently, and occupy a more secure position in category planning. Chickpeas sit longer, which in shelf space economics translates directly to reduced commercial protection, and increased vulnerability to SKU consolidation. 3 or more large chains are reducing their canned chickpea presence as part of broader bean aisle rationalization in 2026. The nutritional distinction that makes this reduction consequential is resistant starch content. Chickpeas contain significant quantities of resistant starch, a carbohydrate fraction that bypasses enzymatic digestion in the small intestine entirely, reaching the colon where it functions as a fermentation substrate for beneficial bacterial populations. The clinical research on resistant starch consumption has consistently associated it with improved satiety duration, reduced postprandial blood glucose elevation, and enhanced microbiome diversity. In a dietary context where shelf-stable foods dominate intake, the glucose-stabilizing effect of resistant starch becomes practically significant. Heavily processed shelf-stable carbohydrates tend to produce rapid glucose elevation, followed by energy crashes that compound fatigue and impair decision-making. Resistant starch consumption moderates this pattern measurably. It's drained and roasted at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes with olive oil and salt. Canned chickpeas become texturally satisfying in a way that cold beans never achieve. Crispy, nutty, and genuinely palatable as a standalone snack. Blended with olive oil, garlic, and any available acid source from the pantry, a drained can produces hummus for under $1.50 with no specialized equipment. When store brands consolidate, organic alternatives fill the vacancy at $3.50 to $4 per can. Number 8. Fat-free canned refried beans. The dietary restriction casualty receiving no acknowledgement in mainstream coverage. There are 2 fundamentally different products sharing the refried beans shelf label, and the distinction between them has genuine clinical significance for a meaningful portion of the population. Full-fat refried beans are prepared with lard or vegetable shortening, a traditional formulation with a strong flavor profile and a fat content that renders the product inappropriate for individuals managing cardiovascular conditions, elevated LDL cholesterol, or specific dietary protocols requiring restricted fat intake. Fat-free refried beans are prepared without added fat, a different nutritional structure, considerably more neutral flavor, and a distinct functional profile. Fat-free refried bean store brand SK-US are being discontinued at several regional chains, particularly across southwestern distribution networks, through 2026. Full-fat versions generate higher velocity. Premium organic lines generate better margins. The consolidation logic is commercially rational. The household-level consequence is that a population segment managing genuine dietary restrictions loses access to a staple protein source without any alternative of equivalent nutritional structure. Beyond the dietary restriction argument, fat-free refried beans represent the fastest complete meal preparation available in shelf-stable format requiring no equipment whatsoever. 1 can, 1 spoon, 1 can of canned green chilies from the previous item. Is spread on available crackers or consumed directly from the can. 7 grams of protein per serving, 6 grams of fiber, preparation time under 60 seconds, 0 heat required, combined cost of approximately $1.50 for both cans. That utility profile has no equivalent at this price point. Current store brand pricing runs approximately $1.90. When store brands are discontinued, premium alternatives will occupy the same shelf space at $2.50 to $3.50. Number 7. Full-fat Thai and Vietnamese coconut milk. The import casualty being replaced by a domestically produced product that is not the same thing. The product differentiation point here is nutritional, not aesthetic, and the label will not help most consumers identify it. Full-fat coconut milk from Southeast Asian producers. The cans historically found in the international aisle carries 14 to 17 grams of fat per serving. Many domestic alternatives moving into that shelf space carry approximately half that fat content. The visual presentation is similar. The can occupies the same physical location. The nutritional profile is categorically different. The driver of this transition is import economics. And tariff adjustments and supplier margin compression have made it commercially difficult for several major chains to maintain contracts with international coconut milk producers. The shift to domestic alternatives resolves the margin problem. It does not preserve the product. The fat content differential matters because the specific fat in full-fat coconut milk is predominantly medium-chain triglycerides, a class of dietary fat processed directly by the liver into ketone bodies rather than being packaged into lipoproteins and stored. Published nutrition research has documented associations between MCT consumption and improved cognitive performance under caloric stress. The mechanism is straightforward. The brain can utilize ketones as an alternative fuel source when glucose availability is reduced. SOR and MCT consumption supports ketone availability without requiring full dietary ketosis. Identifying the authentic product on the shelf requires 3 seconds and 1 data point. Check the fat grams per serving. Below 12 grams indicates a diluted product. 14 to 17 grams indicates authentic full-fat coconut milk. At Asian grocery stores, these cans typically run under $2. At mainstream chains, closer to $2.50. Both are moving toward reduced availability at major retailers. Number 6. Canned coconut cream. The shelf-stable fat reserve that no other pantry item adequately replaces. The distinction between coconut cream and coconut milk is essential and frequently misunderstood. Coconut cream is the high-fat fraction, thick, dense, calorie-dense, with a fat content roughly double that of full-fat coconut milk. The refrigerated carton products labeled with coconut terminology are a third category entirely, filled with stabilizers and water to achieve pourable consistency with a fraction of the fat content found in a quality canned product. These are not interchangeable products. They serve different functions and have different nutritional profiles. Distribution contacts have indicated significant SKU count reductions for canned coconut cream at several major chains in 2026. The commercial explanation is velocity and per-unit shipping cost. The practical consequence is the loss of a shelf-stable fat source with a multi-year ambient storage life and a caloric density of approximately 445 calories per can, predominantly from fat. Dietary fat is not optional in human physiology. It is required for cellular membrane integrity, fat-soluble vitamin absorption, neurological function, and hormonal regulation. In any scenario where routine grocery access is disrupted, the fat category depletes first because it is most dependent on perishable products. Butter, cream, and most high-fat animal products fail within hours without refrigeration. Coconut cream does not. The lauric acid content, a medium-chain fatty acid with well-documented antimicrobial properties, makes it one of the most bioavailable fat sources available in a standard grocery store. Current pricing of approximately $2.79 per can will increase meaningfully when diluted domestic alternatives fill the vacated shelf space. 3 items left, and these are the ones most likely to represent genuine long-term nutritional gaps if they leave your local store. If you want to stay ahead of decisions like these before they happen, like, comment, and subscribe. Number 5. Shelf-stable aseptic tofu. The complete protein source that no preparedness list takes seriously, and should. Addressing the immediate objection directly, the resistance to tofu in preparedness context is understandable, but it is costing households something nutritionally specific that nothing else at this price point and shelf life combination replaces. Aseptic packaged tofu, sold in shelf-stable rectangular cartons under brands using ultra-high temperature processing and multi-layer sealed packaging, achieves a 12-month or greater ambient shelf life without refrigeration. This is not the refrigerated block in the produce section. It is a categorically different product, sitting unrefrigerated in the international or health food aisle, awaiting the consumers who understand what they are looking at. Complete proteins, foods containing all 9 essential amino acids in proportions adequate for human metabolic requirements, are uncommon in shelf-stable formats. Most shelf-stable complete proteins are animal products. For households managing vegetarian dietary requirements, food allergies, or religious dietary restrictions that exclude animal protein, the shelf-stable complete protein options are severely limited. Aseptic tofu is one of a handful of products that fills this gap at a price point under $2 per package. The practical preparation insight that changes the entire usability profile. Silken variety aseptic tofu, blended directly into any canned soup, becomes structurally invisible. The texture disappears into the liquid. The soup takes on a creamy consistency. The protein content of the dish doubles. No detectable flavor change occurs. One package delivering 10 grams of complete protein at a cost of approximately $1.89 with a 12-month ambient shelf life represents a nutritional value proposition that does not exist elsewhere at this price. Mainstream grocery chains have been shifting aseptic tofu toward specialty sections with reduced SKU counts as part of 2026 shelf space consolidation. When it moves to specialty-only availability, the effective price increases significantly, and access in rural markets decreases substantially. Number 4. Canned sardines in olive oil. The single most nutritionally complete tin available in any grocery store at any price. The resistance to sardines is documented. Predictable and rooted almost universally in either a single unpleasant prior experience or the olfactory memory of an incorrectly stored or prepared product. Setting that aside requires only the willingness to hold a factual assessment for 60 seconds. Sardines are one of a very small number of foods that simultaneously contain vitamin D3, long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, and highly bioavailable calcium in a single serving. This combination is confirmed in NIH dietary reference data and USDA food composition databases. Vitamin D3, the form present in sardines, is absorbed with substantially greater efficiency than D2, the form found in most plant-based fortified products and many supplements. The calcium in sardines, which are canned with their soft bones fully incorporated into the product, exhibits superior bioavailability compared to calcium carbonate, the form used in most supplement tablets, because it is delivered in a food matrix alongside cofactors that facilitate absorption.